The massive cargo ship Stellar Horizon shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near the Kepler station. Captain Zara Voss rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the sprawling space station that served as the galaxy's most notorious trading hub. Ships from dozens of species clustered around the station like metal insects drawn to light. "Another delivery run," muttered her co-pilot Jake Morrison as he guided their ship toward the docking bay. "What's the cargo this time?" Zara checked her manifest pad. "Scientific equipment bound for the Altarian research facility. Nothing too exciting." She paused, noticing an additional entry that hadn't been there during their last inspection. "Wait, there's something else here." "Emergency pickup from Bay 94. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Emergency pickup? That wasn't in our original contract." The communication system crackled to life. A stressed voice filled the cockpit. "Cargo vessel Stellar Horizon. This is Station Commander Theclon. You have authorization for immediate pickup from Bay 94. Priority Alpha clearance." Zara frowned. Priority Alpha meant either extremely valuable cargo or extremely dangerous cargo, sometimes both. "Understood, Commander. What exactly are we transporting?" A long pause followed. "A specimen container. Destination is the Galactic Research Institute on Proxima 7. You'll receive additional compensation for the inconvenience." After docking, Zara and Jake made their way through the station's crowded corridors. Kepler Station buzzed with activity as traders, smugglers, and legitimate merchants conducted business in dozens of languages. The air recyclers worked overtime to filter out the mixture of atmospheric preferences from various species. Bay 94 sat in the restricted section of the station. Two heavily armed Rigelian guards flanked the entrance, their insectoid faces unreadable behind tactical visors. Commander Theclon, a tall reptilian saurian, waited for them with obvious relief. "Captain Voss, thank the stars you're here," Theclon said, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. "We have a situation that requires immediate resolution." Through the bay's reinforced viewport, Zara could see a massive containment unit. The container was easily 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide, constructed from military-grade titanium steel composite. Warning lights flashed along its surface, and she could hear a low humming sound from the power systems, keeping whatever was inside sedated. "What exactly is in there?" Jake asked, his voice barely concealing his nervousness. Theclon's tongue flicked out nervously. "A creature unlike anything we've encountered before. It was discovered on a derelict ship drifting in the Vega system. The original crew was, well, there was no original crew left to tell us what happened." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of creature are we talking about?" "The xenobiologists are calling it a shadow stalker. It's roughly humanoid but stands nearly 4 meters tall. Its body seems to be composed of a substance that absorbs light, making it appear as a living shadow. But that's not the worst part." Theclon paused, gathering himself. "It appears to be highly intelligent and extremely aggressive. It killed 3 research teams before we managed to sedate it." Jake stepped closer to the viewport. As if sensing his presence, something massive moved within the container. The movement was fluid, unnatural, like smoke given form and malevolent purpose. "Why can't you just keep it here?" Zara asked. "This station has some of the best containment facilities in the sector." Theclon's expression grew even more troubled. "Because it's learning. Every day it remains conscious. It studies our containment methods. Yesterday it nearly escaped by manipulating the electronic locks through some form of electromagnetic interference we don't understand. The Research Institute has specialized facilities designed for exactly this type of threat. And you want us to transport this thing across 3 systems?" Jake's voice cracked slightly. "The container is completely self-contained with its own power source and life support systems. The sedation system has enough reserves for a 2-week journey. Your trip should take less than 5 days." Theclon gestured to his aide, who handed Zara a datapad. "The compensation is substantial." Zara's eyes widened at the figure displayed on the screen. It was enough to pay off their ship and fund comfortable retirements. That's a lot of credits. The Galactic Research Institute is very motivated to acquire this specimen. They believe it could represent a new form of life entirely, possibly even artificial in origin. The scientific implications are staggering. Despite the generous payment, something felt wrong about the whole situation. Zara had spent 15 years hauling cargo across the galaxy, and her instincts had kept her alive through encounters with pirates, system failures, and worse, Those same instincts were screaming warnings now. "What aren't you telling us?" she asked directly. Theclon hesitated, then spoke quietly. "The creature seems to respond differently to various species. With saurians like myself, it shows pure aggression. The same with Rigelians, Altarians, and every other species we've exposed it to. But there was one incident." He trailed off. "What kind of incident?" Jake pressed. "A human maintenance worker accidentally entered the containment area while the creature was conscious. We expected the worst, prepared for another casualty. But instead of attacking, the creature simply watched him. It didn't move, didn't show any sign of hostility. The worker was able to complete his repairs and leave without incident." Zara and Jake exchanged glances. "You think it reacts differently to humans?" Zara asked. "It's possible. Human psychology and biology are unique among known species. Perhaps there's something about your species that resonates with it." The implications hung in the air. If the creature truly responded differently to humans, it might explain why they were being specifically recruited for this job. It also meant they might be the only ones capable of safely transporting it. "The container systems are automated," Theclon continued. "You won't need to interact with the creature directly. Just deliver it to Proxima 7, collect your payment, and walk away rich." Zara studied the containment unit again. Whatever was inside shifted again, and she could swear she felt eyes watching her through the reinforced walls. The rational part of her mind said to walk away, find another cargo run, and forget about this whole situation. But the credits were too good to pass up, and her ship needed major repairs that would otherwise take years to afford. Sometimes in the cargo business, you had to take risks to survive. "We'll do it," she said finally. "But I want full disclosure on the creature's capabilities and a complete technical manual for the containment system." Theclon nodded eagerly. "Of course. My team will transfer everything to your ship's computer. You can depart as soon as the container is loaded." As they watched the loading crews carefully maneuver the massive container into their cargo hold, Jake moved closer to Zara. "Are you sure about this? Something feels off about this whole deal." Zara watched the warning lights pulse on the container's surface. "Maybe. But we need the money, and if this thing really does react differently to humans, we might be the safest option for everyone involved." Neither of them realized that deep within the container, something ancient and hungry had awakened, and it was very interested in its new human companions. The stellar horizon hummed quietly as it cruised through hyperspace toward Proxima 7. Zara had set the autopilot for their 3-day journey and tried to focus on routine maintenance tasks, but her attention kept drifting to the cargo hold. The container's status lights were visible through the security monitors, pulsing steadily to indicate normal sedation levels. Jake emerged from the galley with 2 cups of synthetic coffee. "The creature's been quiet for the past 18 hours. Maybe this won't be as complicated as we thought." Zara accepted the coffee gratefully. "Maybe. But I keep thinking about what Commander Theclon said about it learning. What if it's not actually unconscious? What if it's just waiting?" Waiting? For what? Before Zara could answer, an alert chimed from the ship's computer. She pulled up the diagnostic screen and frowned. "That's odd. We're showing a minor power fluctuation in the cargo hold." Jake leaned over her shoulder to read the display. "Could be a problem with the container's power systems. Should we check it out? The manual says the container is completely self-sufficient. It shouldn't be drawing power from our ship's systems at all." Zara pulled up the technical specifications they'd received from Theclon's team. According to this, the container has its own fusion cell with enough power for 2 weeks. Another alert sounded, this one more urgent. The power fluctuations were increasing, and now they were affecting the ship's main systems. The lights dimmed briefly before the backup generators kicked in. "That's not normal," Jake said, stating the obvious. Zara made a decision. "We need to check the cargo hold. If that container is malfunctioning, it could damage our ship or worse." They made their way through the ship's narrow corridors to the cargo hold. The space was dominated by the massive containment unit, which sat secured in the center of the hold with magnetic clamps. The warning lights continued their steady pulse, but now Zara could see something that hadn't been there before. Thin tendrils of what looked like black smoke were seeping from the container's ventilation ports. "Is that supposed to happen?" Jake asked nervously. Zara checked the manual on her datapad. "No mention of any kind of vapor or gas emission. This definitely isn't normal." As they watched, The black tendrils began to spread across the cargo hold floor, moving with purpose rather than simply dissipating into the air. The substance seemed to be exploring, testing the boundaries of the space. "We should contact Kepler Station," Jake suggested. "Get some expert advice on what to do. We're already 12 hours into hyperspace. It would take too long for any help to reach us." Zara studied the spreading tendrils more carefully. They seemed to be avoiding the areas where she and Jake were standing. "Look at the pattern. It's not random." Jake followed her gaze and realized she was right. The black substance was deliberately staying away from them, creating a rough circle around their position. It was almost as if it was being polite, giving them space. "This is impossible," Jake muttered. "It's supposed to be sedated." Zara approached the container slowly, watching for any change in the creature's behavior. The black tendrils shifted slightly but didn't retreat. Up close she could see that the substance wasn't really smoke at all. It had texture and density, more like liquid shadow than gas. "Hello," she said quietly, feeling foolish even as the word left her mouth. The response was immediate and startling. The black tendrils suddenly converged into a more solid form, rising from the floor to create a rough approximation of a humanoid figure. It stood about 2 meters tall, much smaller than the 4-meter creature described in the reports. The figure had no distinct features, but somehow Zara got the impression it was looking directly at her. Jake stumbled backward, reaching for the emergency comm panel. "Zara, get away from that thing." "Wait," Zara said, holding up a hand to stop him. "It's not attacking. Look at it." The shadow figure remained perfectly still, its form rippling slightly as if it was made of water. After a moment, it raised one arm in what could only be interpreted as a greeting. "Incredible," Zara breathed. "It's trying to communicate." The figure began to move more fluidly, its form shifting and changing. For a moment, it took on Jake's approximate shape and size, then shifted to match Zara's proportions. It seemed to be studying them, learning about their forms and movements. "The report said it was hostile," Jake said, though he had stopped backing toward the comm panel. "This doesn't seem hostile at all." "Maybe it was only hostile because it felt threatened," Zara suggested. "Think about it. It wakes up in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by alien species it's never seen before, and everyone's pointing weapons at it. I'd be pretty aggressive, too." The shadow figure seemed to respond to their conversation, its form becoming more stable and defined. While it remained featureless, there was something unmistakably curious about its posture. Zara made a decision that would have terrified her an hour ago. She sat down cross-legged on the cargo hold floor, making herself as non-threatening as possible. "We're not going to hurt you," she said clearly. "We're just taking you somewhere safe." The shadow figure tilted its head, then slowly began to shrink until it was roughly the same size as Zara. It then sat down as well, mirroring her posture with uncanny accuracy. "This is unbelievable," Jake said, though he too began to relax. "It's like it's trying to put us at ease. Or maybe it's just naturally empathetic," Zara suggested. "Some Earth animals can sense emotions and respond accordingly. Maybe this creature has similar abilities, just more advanced." Over the next hour, they conducted a series of simple experiments. The creature could manipulate its form with incredible precision, creating basic shapes and even crude representations of objects from around the cargo hold. It seemed particularly fascinated by their tools and equipment, studying them intently before creating perfect shadow replicas. Most remarkably, it appeared to understand the concept of personal space and consent. When Jake held out his hand, the creature would extend a tendril to touch it, but only after Jake had made the gesture first. It never invaded their space without invitation. "I think we've been completely wrong about this creature," Zara said finally. "It's not a mindless beast. It's intelligent, maybe more intelligent than we are." "But why was it so aggressive with the other species?" Jake asked. Zara had been thinking about that. Maybe it sensed something different about humans. Our brain chemistry, our electromagnetic fields, something that made us seem less threatening or more familiar. The creature seemed to be listening to their conversation with interest. Suddenly, It began to change shape again, this time creating a complex three-dimensional form that took both humans a moment to recognize. It was a rough but recognizable map of the local star systems, complete with planetary orbits and hyperspace routes. The creature pointed to one specific system and then to itself. "Is that where you're from?" Zara asked. The creature nodded, a gesture it had clearly learned from watching them. Then it pointed to another system on the map, one that Zara recognized as their destination, Proxima 7. "You know where we're taking you," she realized. "And you're okay with it?" Another nod. The creature then created a small replica of their ship and moved it along the route from their current position to Proxima 7, demonstrating its understanding of their journey. "It's been conscious this whole time," Jake said with wonder. "Probably since we left Kepler Station, it could have broken out of that container whenever it wanted, but it chose to stay." Zara felt a chill of realization. "Because it wanted to see where we were taking it. It's been using this opportunity to study us just like we've been studying it." The creature created a new shape, this one resembling the containment unit. Then it created a tiny figure that was unmistakably human and placed it next to the container. The message was clear. It preferred their company to the confines of its prison. "The sedation system in the container," Zara said suddenly. "I bet it figured out how to counteract it. It's been awake and aware, just pretending to be unconscious." As if confirming her suspicion, the creature created a replica of the container's control panel and demonstrated how certain controls could be manipulated to override the sedation system. "We're dealing with something extraordinary here," Zara said. "This isn't just a dangerous alien creature. This is a being with intelligence, curiosity, and apparently a desire to cooperate with humans." The revelation changed everything about their mission. They weren't just transporting a specimen anymore. They were carrying a passenger, one who had chosen to trust them with its freedom and possibly its life. The question now was what they would do with that trust. The discovery that their passenger was not only conscious but actively choosing to cooperate changed the entire dynamic aboard the Stellar Horizon. Zara and Jake spent the next several hours in the cargo hold, conducting what could only be described as the galaxy's first interspecies conversation with a being that had no vocal cords. The creature, which they had started calling Shadow for lack of a better name, demonstrated remarkable learning abilities. Within 2 hours, it had figured out how to manipulate its form to create recognizable letters and simple words. Its first successful word was human, which it formed with perfect precision in glowing dark matter that somehow remained visible against the cargo hold's metal flooring. How is it doing that? Jake wondered aloud, watching Shadow create the word friend next to its previous effort. Some form of controlled electromagnetic manipulation, Zara guessed. Remember what Commander Thecalon said about it interfering with electronic locks? Maybe it can control energy at a molecular level. Shadow seemed to understand their curiosity and began demonstrating its abilities more clearly. It created a small replica of an atom, complete with orbiting electrons, then showed how it could manipulate the electron paths to create different energy patterns. The display was so advanced that both humans realized they were witnessing technology far beyond anything in the known galaxy. "You're not from anywhere in our local systems, are you?" Zara asked. Shadow created a three-dimensional star map, much more detailed than its previous attempt. This time, it showed not just local systems but entire galactic arms, zooming out to display a perspective that would be impossible without faster-than-light observation capabilities. It pointed to a region so distant that it wasn't included in any human star charts. "Another galaxy entirely," Jake breathed. "But how did you get here?" The answer came in the form of an elaborate story told through shifting shapes and forms. Shadow showed them images of a massive war, entire star systems consumed by conflict. It depicted itself as one of many similar beings, fighting against something that appeared to be a form of mechanical intelligence, spreading across their home galaxy like a virus. A war against artificial intelligence, Zara interpreted. "And you lost?" Shadow's form flickered with what seemed like sadness. It showed the last of its kind fleeing in great ships, scattering across the void between galaxies. Then it depicted its own ship, damaged and failing, finally arriving in the Vega system only to crash on a dead world where it waited for eons before being discovered. "The derelict ship where they found you," Jake realized. It was yours. Shadow nodded and then created something that made both humans gasp. It formed a perfect replica of itself, but this time at full size, showing them what it truly looked like when not compressed into their cargo hold. The figure was magnificent, standing 4 meters tall with an almost regal bearing. Its form was more sophisticated than they had realized, composed of what appeared to be living dark matter that could shift between states of being at will. You've been making yourself smaller to avoid frightening us, Zara said with sudden understanding. Another nod. Shadow then demonstrated its true capabilities, briefly expanding to show its natural size before immediately shrinking back down. The message was clear. It was powerful enough to break free from any containment, but it chose to remain because it found humans interesting. Why us? Jake asked. What makes humans different from all the other species you've encountered? Shadow's response was complex and took several attempts to convey clearly. It created representations of various galactic species, showing their typical electromagnetic signatures, brainwave patterns, and emotional responses. Most species, it demonstrated, operated on frequencies that were harsh and aggressive to its senses, but humans operated on a different frequency entirely, one that resonated with Shadow's natural harmonic patterns. We're compatible, Zara said slowly, like tuning forks that vibrate at the same frequency. Shadow created the word harmony and placed it between representations of itself and the humans, but their peaceful interaction was interrupted by an urgent alarm from the ship's bridge. Zara and Jake rushed to the cockpit with Shadow flowing behind them like a dark river. The navigation display showed 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace directly in their path. Pirates, Jake said grimly, recognizing the non-standard ship configurations, probably hoping to catch a lone cargo hauler. The lead ship was already broadcasting the standard pirate ultimatum: surrender cargo and credits, or be destroyed. Zara looked at their options and didn't like what she saw. The Stellar Horizon was a cargo hauler, not a warship. They had basic shields and no significant weapons. Can we outrun them? She asked. Jake checked their engine status. Not likely. They're using military-grade interceptors. We'd need to drop out of hyperspace to change course, and they'd be on us before we could jump again. Behind them, Shadow had been listening intently to their conversation. Suddenly, it flowed forward and began manipulating the ship's control panels with tendrils of dark matter. What are you doing? Zara asked, alarmed. Shadow created the word help in the air, then pointed at the pirate ships on the display. Its intentions were clear. It wanted to assist in dealing with the threat. You can't go outside the ship, Jake protested. There's no atmosphere in space. Shadow's form rippled with what seemed like amusement. It created a representation of itself surrounded by a bubble of dark matter, then showed the bubble moving through space independently. The message was clear. It didn't need atmosphere or life support systems. You're offering to fight them? Zara asked. Shadow nodded, then created a more detailed plan. It showed itself leaving the ship, approaching the pirate vessels and disabling their engines without harming the crews. It wasn't proposing violence, just neutralization. Zara felt torn. Accepting Shadow's help would mean trusting a being they had known for less than a day with their lives. But refusing might mean death for all of them, including Shadow itself. The pirates won't understand what you are, she warned. They might try to capture you or kill you. Shadow created the word trust and pointed at both humans. The decision was made for them when the lead pirate ship fired a warning shot across their bow. The energy blast passed close enough to their ship to trigger damage alarms. Next shot won't be a warning, came the pirate captain's voice over the comm. Prepare to be boarded. Do it, Zara said to Shadow. But be careful. We don't want anyone to get hurt if we can avoid it. Shadow flowed toward the ship's airlock, but instead of opening it, it simply phased through the hull as if the metal wasn't there. Zara and Jake watched in amazement as their new friend demonstrated yet another impossible ability. On the external cameras, they could see Shadow moving through space like a dark comet, its form trailing streams of controlled energy. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. The pirates saw it coming and reacted with predictable aggression, opening fire with everything they had. Energy beams and projectile weapons converged on Shadow's position, but none of them seemed to have any effect. The dark matter being simply absorbed the attacks and continued its approach. When Shadow reached the first pirate ship, it didn't attack. Instead, it enveloped the vessel in a cocoon of dark matter. Through the ship's hull, the pirates could see tendrils of shadow moving through their systems, but their ship remained intact. After a few moments, all of their weapons and engines simply stopped working. The same process was repeated with the other two ships. Within minutes, all three pirate vessels were disabled but unharmed, floating helplessly in space with their crews uninjured but thoroughly terrified. Shadow returned to the stellar horizon and flowed back through the hull into the cargo hold. It immediately created the word safe for Zara and Jake to see. Incredible, Jake said. It neutralized 3 armed ships without firing a single shot. Zara was already on the comm, broadcasting on emergency frequencies to report the disabled pirate ships to the nearest patrol station. The pirates would be picked up by authorities and their crews would face justice without any loss of life. "Thank you," she said to Shadow when they returned to the cargo hold. "You saved our lives." Shadow created a new word. Family. The meaning was clear. In the space of a single day, they had gone from cargo haulers transporting a dangerous specimen to a found family of 3 very different beings who had chosen to trust each other. But as they resumed course for Proxima 7, Zara couldn't help but wonder what would happen when they reached their destination. The Galactic Research Institute expected a sedated specimen for study. Instead, they would be delivering a sentient being with capabilities that could revolutionize understanding of physics and biology. The question was whether the researchers would see Shadow as a person deserving of rights and freedom, or simply as a more interesting specimen to be studied and contained. That decision, Zara realized, would determine not just Shadow's fate, but the future relationship between humanity and potentially the most advanced being ever encountered in the galaxy. As the stellar horizon approached Proxima 7, the weight of their situation settled heavily on Zara's shoulders. She stood in the cargo hold watching Shadow practice creating increasingly complex words and phrases in the air. The being had progressed from simple nouns to full sentences, demonstrating an intelligence that was clearly far beyond what anyone had imagined. Research Institute expects sleeping prisoner, Shadow had written in flowing dark letters. I understand problem. Jake paced nervously nearby. We can't just hand you over to them like some kind of specimen. You're a person, not a lab rat. But we signed a contract, Zara reminded him. If we don't deliver, we forfeit the payment and could face legal action for breach of contract. Shadow created new words. I have solution. Trust me. Before either human could ask what the solution might be, the ship's communication system chimed with an incoming message. The holographic display activated, showing a stern-faced woman in a research uniform. Cargo vessel Stellar Horizon, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Xenobiology at the Galactic Research Institute. We're tracking your approach and are prepared to receive the specimen. Please maintain current course for Docking Bay 7. Understood, Dr. Vasquez, Zara replied. We'll be docking in approximately 4 hours. Excellent. I trust the containment unit has maintained proper sedation throughout your journey. Zara felt Shadow's attention focus intently on the conversation. The container systems have been functioning within normal parameters. Good. We have a specialized containment facility prepared. This specimen represents a breakthrough in our understanding of exotic matter physics. The data we collect could revolutionize energy manipulation technology. The casual way Dr. Vasquez referred to Shadow as a specimen and data source made Jake's jaw clench. Shadow, meanwhile, had begun creating something new in the air. It was a detailed schematic of the Research Institute's layout, pulled from databases that shouldn't have been accessible from their current distance. How do you know what their facility looks like? Zara asked quietly after ending the communication. I have been listening to their transmissions, Shadow explained through flowing text. Their containment system is designed to hold simple matter beings, will not work on dark matter entity. So you could escape whenever you wanted? Yes, but escape not best solution. Humans and shadow beings could benefit from cooperation. Need better approach. Shadow began creating a complex plan in 3-dimensional form, showing the research station, the docking procedures, and several alternative scenarios. Its proposal was both brilliant and audacious. You want to pretend to be unconscious during the transfer, then reveal yourself once you're in a controlled environment? Jake interpreted. Correct. We'll demonstrate consciousness to researchers slowly. Show intelligence and cooperation. Make them understand I am person, not specimen. Zara studied the plan carefully. That could work, but it's risky. If they panic and decide you're too dangerous, they might try to destroy you. Humans present will prevent extreme reactions. You will stay as witnesses and advocates. The plan required trust on all sides. Shadow would have to trust that the researchers wouldn't react with immediate hostility. Zara and Jake would have to trust that Shadow could handle whatever the scientist threw at it. And everyone would have to trust that the Research Institute could be convinced to treat Shadow as a sentient being, rather than a test subject. As they approached the research station, Zara felt increasingly nervous about their improvised diplomacy mission. The Galactic Research Institute was known for its cutting-edge work, but also for its sometimes questionable ethics when it came to specimen acquisition and testing. The station itself was impressive, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules orbiting Proxima 7, massive laboratories, containment facilities, and research centers created a small city in space, dedicated to pushing the boundaries of scientific knowledge. Final approach to Docking Bay 7, Jake announced as he guided the ship through the station's traffic control patterns. Shadow had already flowed back into its container and activated the appearance of sedation. To external sensors, it would appear completely unconscious. Only Zara and Jake knew that it was fully aware and listening to everything around it. The docking procedure went smoothly, and within minutes they were approached by a team of researchers in full environmental suits. Dr. Vasquez led the team, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity as she examined the containment unit. "Remarkable," she breathed, running a scanner over the container's surface. "The readings are unlike anything in our databases. The matter density fluctuations suggest a form of consciousness we've never encountered." "About that," Zara began carefully, "there are some things about this creature that weren't in the original reports." Dr. Vasquez looked up sharply. "What kind of things?" "It may be more intelligent than anyone realized. During our journey, we observed some unusual behaviors that suggest advanced cognitive abilities. All the more reason to begin comprehensive testing immediately," Dr. Vasquez replied, missing the implication entirely. Conscious exotic matter beings could represent an entirely new category of life. The transfer to the research facility's containment lab was conducted with military precision. The specialized chamber was a marvel of engineering, designed to hold beings that could manipulate energy and matter in ways that conventional containment couldn't handle. Force fields, electromagnetic barriers, and quantum locks created multiple layers of security. As the container was positioned in the center of the chamber, Dr. Vasquez activated the lab's observation systems. "We'll begin with basic consciousness tests once the sedation wears off. Neural pattern analysis, response to stimuli, problem-solving capabilities." "Dr. Vasquez," Zara said firmly, "I think you should know that this being may be far more advanced than you're prepared for." "Captain Voss, I appreciate your concern, but we're the galaxy's leading experts in xenobiology. We've handled dangerous specimens before." At that moment, Shadow made its move. The containment unit's status light suddenly shifted from sedation mode to active mode. Alarms began sounding as the sensors detected that their specimen was not only conscious, but somehow aware of its surroundings, despite being in a sealed container. "Impossible," Dr. Vasquez muttered, checking her readings. "The sedation system shows full effectiveness." The container's door opened with a soft hiss and Shadow flowed out like liquid night. But instead of the aggressive behavior the researchers expected, it simply formed itself into a humanoid shape in the center of the containment chamber and waited. "Fascinating," Dr. Vasquez whispered, apparently too intrigued to be afraid. "It's demonstrating controlled behavior. Intelligence beyond our initial assessments." Shadow began creating words in the air, starting with simple greetings. "Hello. I am conscious, I am peaceful." The research team erupted in excited chatter, but Dr. Vasquez held up a hand for silence. "It's attempting communication." "This is unprecedented. Shadow is not specimen," the being continued, clearly having listened to their earlier conversation. "Shadow is person. Shadow chooses cooperation with humans." Dr. Vasquez turned to Zara with a mixture of amazement and accusation. "You knew about this. The creature has been conscious throughout your entire journey." "Shadow has been conscious and cooperative," Zara confirmed. "It chose to come here because it's interested in working with humans." It's not a prisoner or a test subject. It's a potential partner. The implications began to sink in for everyone in the room. They weren't dealing with a specimen to be studied, but with an intelligent being that had voluntarily placed itself in their hands. The entire dynamic of the situation had changed in an instant. Shadow knows much about dark matter physics, the being continued, creating complex equations in the air that made several researchers gasp in recognition. Shadow can teach. Humans can learn. Mutual benefit. Dr. Vasquez stared at the floating mathematics, her scientific training warring with protocols that had never anticipated a scenario like this. These equations, they're solving problems we've been working on for decades. Shadow escaped from war in distant galaxy, the being explained, creating visual representations of its story. Shadow's people fought machines that consumed worlds. Shadow knows technology that could help protect this galaxy. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. They weren't just dealing with an intelligent being, but potentially with a refugee carrying knowledge that could benefit all known species. Dr. Vasquez, Zara said quietly, I think we need to reconsider the entire nature of this situation. One of the younger researchers stepped forward eagerly. The technological applications alone could advance our civilization by centuries, if it's willing to share knowledge. If treated as equal, Shadow emphasized, somehow managing to convey firmness despite having no vocal cords. Not as prisoner or experiment. Dr. Vasquez looked around at her team, then at the containment chamber that was clearly inadequate for holding a being that could phase through matter at will. I need to contact the Institute's ethics board immediately, and probably the Galactic Council. This situation is far beyond our standard protocols. Shadow understands bureaucracy takes time. The being created patiently. Shadow will wait, but Shadow requests humans Zara and Jake remain as advocates. 3 months had passed since Shadow's formal recognition as a galactic citizen, and the research station had been transformed into a hub of unprecedented scientific collaboration. Representatives from dozens of species worked alongside human researchers and Shadow itself, creating innovations that were reshaping understanding of physics, biology, and technology. Zara stood in the observation deck of what was now called the Cooperative Research Center, watching Shadow work with a team of Altarian mathematicians on quantum field equations. The being had adapted remarkably well to its new role as teacher and researcher, though it still preferred the company of humans above other species. The harmonic resonance calculations are complete, announced Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the human physicists who had become Shadow's closest collaborator. If Shadow's theories are correct, we should be able to create stable dark matter shields within the month. Jake approached Zara, carrying a datapad filled with reports. The progress reports from all departments are incredible. Agricultural applications of dark matter manipulation could solve food shortages across 12 systems. Medical applications could extend lifespans by decades, and the defense applications, he shook his head in amazement, are hopefully something we'll never need to use. Zara finished, but that hope was shattered when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in red as station personnel rushed to their emergency positions. Zara and Jake ran toward the command center where they found Dr. Vasquez coordinating with military officials. What's the situation? Zara asked. Long-range sensors have detected something in the void between galaxies, Dr. Vasquez replied grimly. Multiple objects, massive in scale, moving toward our galaxy at incredible speed. On the main display, the sensor data painted a terrifying picture. Hundreds of enormous objects, each one larger than a small moon, were approaching in formation. Their trajectory would bring them into the outer rim systems within 6 months. Could be a natural phenomenon, suggested one of the military advisors hopefully. Rogue planets, asteroid fields? Shadow flowed into the command center, its form more agitated than anyone had ever seen. It immediately began creating words in the air, but for the first time since they'd known it, the being seemed to struggle with human language. Machines, it finally managed. The consuming machines have found this galaxy. The command center fell silent. Everyone had heard Shadow's stories about the war in its home galaxy, but they had seemed like distant history. Now that threat was becoming a present reality. You're certain? Commander Torres asked. These objects match the enemy you fought before? Identical signatures, Shadow confirmed, creating detailed comparisons between the approaching objects and its memories of the machine entities. They consume matter to build more of themselves. They convert planets into ship foundries. They do not negotiate. Dr. Vasquez pulled up galactic defense assessments on her screens. Our combined fleets couldn't stop a force of this magnitude, especially if they can convert matter into more ships. We need solutions, not panic. How long to implement dark matter shield technology fleet-wide? Shadow asked. Months, maybe years, to retrofit existing ships, replied Admiral Santos from the Galactic Defense Force. We don't have that kind of time. Shadow's form began to shift and change, taking on patterns of deep contemplation. Shadow has idea, dangerous, may not survive attempt. What kind of idea? Zara asked, though she feared the answer. Shadow can interface directly with Galactic. Communications network. Transfer dark matter manipulation. Knowledge instantly to all species simultaneously. But process requires Shadow to distribute. Consciousness across entire galaxy. The implications were staggering. Shadow was proposing to sacrifice its individual existence to save the galaxy by turning itself into a living transmission of knowledge. That's insane, Jake protested. There has to be another way. Shadow's people tried other ways, the being replied sadly. All failed. Only complete technological sharing might work. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her calculations. Even with instant knowledge transfer, it would take time to build the necessary equipment. How long before the machines reach inhabited systems? Machines will scout first, Shadow explained. Send advance forces to assess defenses. Shadow estimates 3 months before main invasion begins. Admiral Santos was already working his communications array. I'm calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Every species needs to hear this. Over the next week, representatives from across the galaxy gathered at the research station. The mood was grim as Shadow explained the threat and proposed its desperate solution. Many species that had been skeptical of the human-shadow cooperation were now forced to confront the reality that their survival might depend on trusting this strange being. The proposal is unprecedented, said Chancellor Vex of the Rigelian Consortium. To allow an alien entity to interface with our most sensitive communication networks. Shadow understands distrust, the being responded patiently. But machines will not wait for political consensus. Choice is simple, cooperation or extinction. The debate raged for days. Some species wanted to attempt conventional military solutions, others proposed fleeing to distant galaxies. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the machines despite Shadow's warnings that such attempts were futile. It was Zara who finally cut through the political deadlock. She stood before the assembled delegates, feeling the weight of speaking for not just humanity but for Shadow itself. 3 months ago, everyone in this room thought Shadow was a dangerous specimen to be contained, she began. Now it's offering to sacrifice itself to save civilizations it barely knows. If that doesn't prove its character and intentions, nothing will. But the risks, protested Ambassador Chen. If the consciousness transfer goes wrong, we could lose both Shadow and our communication networks. If transfer fails, machines will destroy networks anyway, Shadow pointed out. Nothing to lose by trying. Dr. Kim presented the technical aspects of the proposal. We've run simulations based on Shadow's physiology. The consciousness transfer is theoretically possible, but we're dealing with technologies beyond our current understanding. Success rates are impossible to calculate. What about you? Jake asked Shadow directly. What happens to you after the transfer? Shadow's form flickered with what seemed like resignation. Shadow individual will cease, but Shadow knowledge will live in all species. Perhaps Shadow essence will survive in network itself. Uncertain. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone had hoped. 57% of species voted to proceed with Shadow's plan. It was enough to authorize the attempt, but barely. Preparations began immediately. The galaxy's most advanced computer scientists worked with Shadow to design the consciousness transfer protocols. Communication networks were reinforced and synchronized. Manufacturing facilities across dozens of worlds began producing dark matter manipulation equipment based on Shadow's designs. As the countdown to the transfer began, Zara spent as much time as possible with Shadow. The being seemed more philosophical than usual, creating poetry and art in addition to technical diagrams. I'm scared for you, Zara admitted during one of their conversations. Shadow is scared too, the being replied honestly. But Shadow remembers home galaxy dying, billions of lives lost because cooperation came too late. Will not let happen again. You've already given us so much, Jake added. No one could ask for more. Humans gave Shadow something precious, the being responded. Gave Shadow family. Gave Shadow purpose beyond survival. Now Shadow can give something back. On the day of the transfer, representatives from every major species gathered to witness the attempt. Shadow had positioned itself in the center of a massive quantum processing array that would serve as the interface point for the galactic network. Ready when you are, Dr. Kim announced from the control station. Shadow turned toward Zara and Jake one last time. Thank you for showing Shadow what friendship means. Remember Shadow to others. We'll never forget you, Zara promised, tears streaming down her face. Shadow began to glow with an inner light as it started the consciousness transfer process. Its form became less solid, more ethereal as it began to distribute itself across the vast communication network that connected every world in the galaxy. The process took hours. Across thousands of worlds, computer systems suddenly gained access to knowledge that had taken Shadow's civilization millennia to develop. Technical manuals, construction blueprints, and theoretical frameworks flowed into databases everywhere. But more than that, each system also received something else, a fragment of Shadow's essence, its curiosity, its desire to help, its capacity for friendship and cooperation. When the transfer was complete, the quantum array stood empty. Shadow as an individual entity was gone. But across the galaxy, scientists and engineers were already beginning to understand technologies that could defend against the approaching machine threat. Zara stared at the empty space where her friend had been, knowing that Shadow lived on in ways that transcended individual existence. The being had become part of the galactic civilization it had chosen to save. Now it remained to be seen if that sacrifice would be enough. 2 months after Shadow's consciousness transfer, the galaxy had transformed into a massive war machine unlike anything in recorded history. Every inhabited world buzzed with activity as species that had barely tolerated each other now worked side by side, united by the knowledge flowing through their networks and the approaching threat that would destroy them all equally. Zara stood on the bridge of the Unity, flagship of the newly formed Galactic Defense Coalition. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, incorporating dark matter shielding technology from Shadow's knowledge, Altarian mathematical precision, Rigelian metallurgy, and human adaptability and design. But what made it truly special was something no one had expected. Captain, we're receiving another echo pattern from the quantum processors, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres, the ship's communications officer. Zara smiled despite the gravity of their situation. The echo patterns had started appearing within days of Shadow's consciousness transfer. At first, scientists had dismissed them as random quantum fluctuations, but the patterns were too consistent, too purposeful. Shadow hadn't been destroyed in the transfer process. Instead, it had become something new, a distributed intelligence that existed within the galactic communication network itself. Put it through the main display, Zara ordered. The holographic projector activated, showing the familiar flowing script that Shadow had always used to communicate. But now the words appeared simultaneously on ships and stations across the entire galaxy. Advanced scout forces detected at grid reference. Sun Alpha. 12 machine entities approaching Kepler Station, estimated arrival. 6 hours. Jake, now serving as the ship's tactical officer, pulled up the relevant star charts. That's where this all started for us. Kepler Station, where we first picked up Shadow's container. Not a coincidence, Zara said grimly. The machines probably traced Shadow's path backward from the derelict ship. They're looking for information about what happened to their target. Throughout the fleet, ships began changing course toward the Kepler system. The Coalition's forces had been positioned strategically throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to machine incursions wherever they appeared. This would be their first real test of Shadow's defensive technologies. Admiral Santos coordinated the response from his command ship. All vessels, this is Fleet Command. We have 12 confirmed bogies approaching Kepler Station. Remember, our primary objectives are to test our defenses and gather intelligence on machine capabilities. Do not engage in prolonged combat until we understand what we're facing. As the combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler Station, they got their first look at the enemy Shadow had warned them about. The machine entities were unlike anything in known databases. Massive constructs that seemed to be part ship, part factory, and part weapon. Each one was roughly spherical, about 5 kilometers in diameter, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. My God, breathed Dr. Kim from her position aboard the science vessel Synthesis. The mathematical precision of their construction is incredible. They're not just machines, they're perfect geometric expressions of function. Machines do not create, came Shadow's response across the fleet communications. Machines only convert. What you see is stolen perfection from consumed civilizations. The machine entities had already reached Kepler Station and were doing exactly what Shadow had predicted. Massive beam projectors extended from their hulls, breaking down the station's matter at the molecular level and drawing the raw materials into their own structures. The process was horrifyingly efficient. Fleet, this is Admiral Santos. All ships activate dark matter shields and prepare to engage. Let's see how our new defenses hold up. The coalition ships spread into attack formation, their hulls shimmering with the new shield technology. The dark matter fields created a strange visual effect, making the ships appear to be outlined in liquid shadow. The machines noticed the approaching fleet and responded immediately. Energy beams that could have vaporized conventional ships struck the dark matter shields and simply disappeared. Absorbed and dissipated harmlessly. Shields holding at 100%, reported the Unity's engineering officer. The energy absorption is working exactly as Shadow predicted. But the machines adapted quickly. Within minutes, they switched from energy weapons to projectile attacks, firing streams of matter that had been converted into incredibly dense kinetic projectiles. Kinetic attacks require different shield configuration, Shadow's voice warned across the fleet. Adjusting parameters now. Throughout the coalition fleet, shield systems automatically reconfigured themselves. The dark matter field shifted from absorption mode to deflection mode, creating gravitational distortions that bent the kinetic projectiles away from their targets. Incredible, Admiral Santos muttered. It's like Shadow is personally adjusting our defenses in real time. Shadow exists in all ship systems simultaneously, came the response. Shadow sees all attacks, coordinates all defenses. The coalition fleet pressed their attack, testing various weapon systems against the machine entities. Conventional energy weapons proved ineffective against the machine's adaptive armor. But the new dark matter projectors that Shadow had designed were devastatingly effective. The dark matter weapons worked by destabilizing the molecular bonds that held the machines together. Instead of trying to destroy them through brute force, the weapons essentially convinced matter to stop being matter for brief moments, creating cascading failures in the machine's structure. 2 of the machine entities were destroyed in the first exchange, their perfect geometric forms collapsing into clouds of component atoms. But the remaining 10 machines immediately adapted, their armor shifting to resist the dark matter attacks. They're learning from each engagement, Jake observed, just like Shadow warned us. But Shadow is learning too, came the response. Observing machine adaptation patterns, developing counter-adaptations. The battle became a deadly dance of adaptation and counter-adaptation. The machines would adjust their defenses, and Shadow would immediately develop new attack methods and distribute them to the entire fleet. For every countermeasure the machines deployed, Shadow had 3 responses ready. But it was clear that this was just a scouting force. The real test would come when the main machine invasion arrived. Fleet withdrawal, Admiral Santos ordered after destroying 8 of the 12 scout machines. We've gathered enough data for now. As the coalition ships pulled back, Zara noticed something troubling on the long-range sensors. The 4 surviving machine entities were not pursuing. Instead, they were systematically scanning the debris field, analyzing the wreckage of their destroyed companions. They're learning from their losses, she realized. When the main force arrives, they'll know everything about our capabilities. Correct, Shadow confirmed. But Shadow also learned from machine tactics. Knowledge flows both ways. During the return journey to the main coalition base, Shadow's distributed consciousness worked tirelessly to analyze the battle data, improvements to shield systems, weapon configurations, and tactical protocols flowed to every ship in the fleet. But there was something else in Shadow's communications now. Something that hadn't been there before the transfer. The distributed intelligence was learning not just about machines and weapons, but about the various species it was helping to defend. Humans show remarkable adaptability under pressure, Shadow observed during one of its reports. Altarians excel at pattern recognition. Rigelians demonstrate exceptional coordination. Each species contributes unique strengths. Dr. Kim, monitoring Shadow's communications from the synthesis, noticed something fascinating. The language patterns are evolving. Shadow isn't just communicating with us anymore. It's becoming part of our collective consciousness. She was right. As Shadow existed within the communication networks of all species, it was beginning to understand not just their technologies but their cultures, their ways of thinking, their hopes and fears. Shadow sees now why cooperation is powerful, came a message that seemed more philosophical than tactical. Many minds working together create possibilities that no single mind could imagine. As they prepared for the main invasion, Zara realized that Shadow's greatest gift to the galaxy might not be its technology, but its demonstration of what different species could accomplish when they truly worked together. The machine invasion was still coming. The real battle was yet to begin. But for the first time since the threat had been discovered, Zara felt genuine hope that they might actually win. The galaxy had found something the machines couldn't adapt to or consume. The power of diverse minds working in perfect harmony, guided by the distributed wisdom of a being that had chosen to become part of something greater than itself. Shadow had not just given them weapons to fight the machines. It had given them unity, and that might be the most powerful weapon of all. The main machine invasion began exactly when Shadow had predicted, with a wave of constructs so massive that they briefly blocked out entire starfields. From the bridge of the Unity, Zara watched as thousands of geometric nightmares dropped out of hyperspace at the galaxy's edge, their perfect forms gleaming with malevolent purpose. "Fleet status report," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. 11,000 coalition ships standing by across 47 systems, Jake reported. All vessels show full dark matter shield integration and weapons online. And Shadow? Shadow is ready, came the familiar response, now speaking through every communication system simultaneously. Shadow has prepared surprise for machines. The past month had been a blur of preparation. Shadow's distributed consciousness had worked tirelessly, not just improving their technology, but also coordinating the efforts of species that had never successfully cooperated before. The result was a level of unity that no one had thought possible. Admiral Santos coordinated the overall strategy from his flagship, but everyone knew that Shadow was the real commander of their forces. The distributed intelligence could process information from thousands of sources simultaneously and coordinate responses faster than any biological mind could. "Comprehend, first wave incoming," reported the sensor officer. 300 machine entities heading for the outer colonies. All fleets, engage according to Shadow Protocol 7, Admiral Santos ordered. The coalition forces spread throughout the galaxy moved with unprecedented coordination. Ships that had never worked together before functioned like parts of a single organism. Their movements guided by Shadow's distributed intelligence and their determination, strengthened by months of cooperation. The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of the chaotic ship-to-ship combat of traditional warfare, this was a carefully orchestrated dance of adaptation and counter-adaptation on a galactic scale. The machines attacked with the same systematic efficiency they had shown at Kepler Station, breaking down everything they encountered and converting it into more machines. But they found themselves facing an enemy that could adapt as quickly as they could, guided by an intelligence that existed everywhere at once. "Implementing resonance pattern Delta," Shadow announced as the first wave of machines reached the outer colonies. All ships synchronized dark matter projectors. Throughout the galaxy, thousands of ships adjusted their weapons simultaneously. The dark matter projectors began firing in perfect harmonic sequence, creating interference patterns that overwhelmed the machine's adaptive capabilities. Entire formations of machine entities simply collapsed as their molecular structure was disrupted by the resonance patterns. But within minutes, the surviving machines had adapted, changing their composition to resist the harmonic attacks. "Switching to Chaos Protocol," Shadow responded immediately. Random pattern generation commencing. This was Shadow's masterstroke. Instead of using predictable attack patterns that the machines could analyze and counter, the coalition forces began using truly random tactical sequences generated by quantum fluctuation algorithms that Shadow had distributed throughout the fleet. The machines, designed to recognize and counter patterns, found themselves helpless against pure chaos. They couldn't adapt to attacks that had no underlying logic or consistency. "It's working," Dr. Kim reported from the synthesis as she watched machine formations break apart in confusion. "The random attack protocols are preventing their adaptation algorithms from finding stable solutions." But the machines had one final adaptation that no one had anticipated. Instead of trying to counter the chaotic attacks individually, they began linking together into vast networks, sharing processing power to analyze the seemingly random patterns for deeper mathematical relationships. "Machines are networking," Shadow warned. "Attempting to find order within chaos. Shadow must respond." What happened next would be remembered as the turning point in the war. Shadow, existing within the communication networks of every coalition ship, began to do something unprecedented. It started networking the minds of every being in the fleet. "Warning, detecting unusual neural interface activity," reported medical officers throughout the fleet. All personnel are showing synchronized brainwave patterns. But instead of alarm, the crews felt a sense of connection, unlike anything they had ever experienced. Humans, Altarians, Rigelians, and dozens of other species found themselves thinking in harmony, their diverse perspectives combining into something greater than the sum of their parts. "I can feel everyone," Jake said in wonder, his consciousness briefly touching the minds of thousands of other beings across the galaxy. "We're all connected," Shadow learned from biological minds, came the explanation. Now Shadow shares that knowledge, biological. "Chaos is different from mathematical chaos, biological. Chaos has heart," the networked fleet began, fighting with a creativity and unpredictability that the machines simply couldn't comprehend. Battle tactics emerged spontaneously from the collective unconscious of millions of minds working together. Ships moved in patterns inspired by art, music, poetry, and dreams rather than military doctrine. A human pilot would have an inspiration based on a childhood memory of playing in waves, and suddenly an entire squadron would flow around machine formations like water around rocks. An Altarian mathematician would perceive a beautiful geometric relationship, and weapons fire would create three-dimensional patterns that disrupted machine coordination systems. The machines, for all their computational power, had no experience with the chaotic beauty of biological creativity. They were designed to process logical patterns, not the flowing improvisation of consciousness itself. "Machine formations are breaking apart," Admiral Santos reported with growing excitement. "They can't maintain coherence against our new tactics." "Machines understand logic," Shadow explained as the tide of battle turned decisively in favor of the coalition. "Machines do not understand love, hope, fear, anger, joy. Biological emotions create patterns that logic cannot predict or counter." The final phase of the battle was almost anticlimactic. The machine entities, designed to consume and convert everything they encountered, found themselves facing an enemy that they literally could not comprehend. The networked consciousness of the coalition forces was something entirely outside their programming parameters. One by one, the machine formations simply stopped functioning, their adaptive algorithms overloaded by the impossibility of categorizing and countering biological creativity, enhanced by Shadow's distributed intelligence. "All machine entities are shutting down," reported sensor stations across the galaxy. Massive power failures detected throughout their formations. "They're not destroyed," Dr. Kim observed, studying the sensor data. "They're just confused. Their systems are caught in recursive loops trying to understand us." Shadow suggests capture rather than destruction, came the recommendation. "Machines still contain knowledge from consumed civilizations. Perhaps knowledge can be recovered." It was a moment of choice that would define the galaxy's future. They could destroy the helpless machines and eliminate the threat forever, or they could try to save whatever remained of the civilizations that had been consumed. "All ships, implement containment protocols," Admiral Santos ordered. "We're bringing them home." The aftermath of the war was as transformative as the battle itself. The captured machines, when safely contained and studied, yielded technologies and knowledge from dozens of destroyed civilizations. More importantly, the process of networking, consciousness during the battle had created permanent changes in how species related to each other. Their temporary mental connection had left lasting bonds of understanding and empathy between individuals who had never even met. Humans found themselves instinctively understanding Altarian mathematics. Rigellians discovered they could appreciate human art. Every species gained new perspectives and capabilities. Shadow believes this was true victory. Came the observation as reconstruction efforts began across the galaxy, not just survival, but transformation into something better. Standing on the observation deck of the rebuilt Kepler station, Zara watched ships from dozens of species working together, with an ease that would have been impossible before the war. The galaxy had been changed forever by Shadow's sacrifice and the bonds forged in desperate cooperation. "Do you think Shadow is happy with what we've become?" Jake asked, joining her at the viewport. "Shadow is content," came the immediate response through the station's communication system. "Shadow found family among humans. Now Shadow has family throughout Galaxy." The being that had once been considered an untamable alien beast had become the foundation of galactic civilization. Its knowledge had saved them from destruction, but more importantly, its example of cooperation and sacrifice had shown them how to become something greater than any single species could achieve alone. In the end, Shadow had been tamed not through force or containment, but through friendship, trust, and the simple recognition that some things are too valuable to be owned by anyone. The galaxy was safer now, protected not just by advanced technology, but by the understanding that diversity of thought and cooperation between different minds was the greatest weapon against an